And good evening to Ridgecrest Talk, your host Paul Vender. Tonight we're talking education with nutrition and healthy eating. My guest Jenelle Frey from the UC California Extension Program. Jenelle, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, talk about your job title, what you do, and a little bit about your programs.
Sure, Paul. Well, thanks for having me tonight. As Paul said, my name is Jenelle Frey. I work with the UC Cooperative Extension, which is the part of the University of California that interfaces with the community. So I do live here in Ridgecrest area, actually in Yokern, and I am a community education specialist. So what that means is I work with teachers here in the schools as well as community organizations to bring nutrition education to low-income families and help them improve their eating, their physical activity, help them learn how to buy food on a budget, and improve their quality of life overall.
Right, and I think, at least for myself, contacting the Extension office in Bakersfield, some of our gardeners in the community are familiar with John Carlick. He came over and gave classes last year at the Water District, hosted those, and I think he also had classes in Tehachapi. And so he sends out a newsletter from time to time, the Green Scene, and I stopped in at the Extension office a couple of weeks back to get some additional information that he talked about. And that's when I was reminded that you were here in the Valley and you were part of the Extension program. And a lot of us here that have been here for a long time aren't always expecting to have people over on this side of the mountains from Kern County. And so it's really exciting to see that you're here and that your focus is for here in Indian Wells Valley. And you actually go all the way down to Rosamond and all the way up into Inyo County, up to Bishop.
That's right.
And so that's a huge area. It's a lot of smaller communities, but it's just a huge area to cover. Why don't you talk about when you first started, what was that like, getting to know the communities and trying to get your programs out there?
Sure. Well, I've been in the Ridgecrest area now for about a year and a half. The military brought my husband and I out here, and as it does a lot of people. I by trade am an educator. I've always worked to help the community, and so I started looking for ways I could do that. And it just happened that my supervisor, who's out of Bakersfield, grew up here in Ridgecrest, and she decided she wanted to put some program funding into bringing the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program, or efnep, to this community. And the stars aligned. She found me, I found the position in the program, and it's almost an impossible job in that I do serve all of the towns between here and Rosamond and here in Bishop, and I'm one person, but really just building those relationships in the last year has been very gratifying. Definitely, coming to a community, a smaller community, sometimes has its challenges, breaking in, being a new person, but I've always been a people person, and I really believe this program can change lots of lives. So I just started getting out there and going to the Indian Wells Valley Health Collaborative and just interfacing with as many people as I could. And we're starting to work with a lot of the schools here this year, as well as doing adult classes through some of the community organizations that are helping people.
Right, and that's actually really exciting, because there's often a disconnect from what's going on in the Bakersfield, metropolitan area versus what's going on over here.
Yes.
We do have a person in our gardening community, Amber Beeson, who's working closely with the Bakersfield schools. She has a goal to get a garden in every school in the county.
Yes.
But with her starting there and just trying to get the curriculum like what you're working with and work through all the bureaucracy, by the time she gets out over here to the east side, could be a number of years unless we're working together. And so it's really great to have you as a resource. And I think I first met you in September or August, whenever school was getting ready to start. You were at the county park getting the information out. Let's talk a little bit, what's one of the programs that you're really trying to get the information out about?
Well, right now we're really focused on our youth program. Youth efnep serves kids age kindergarten through 12th grade. So I'm really just working with the schools, with the teachers. I train them in a curriculum that's specially geared towards that grade level. It's aligned with the California Common Core. It's based on the My Plate, which is what, replaced my pyramid. It also is based on the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. So this is all science-based, but at the same time, all of the activities that have been built in are hands-on. And one of the main curriculum that I've had a lot of fun with is our 4th to 6th grade Nutrition to Grow On program, which combines nutrition but also gardening. And when it comes to it, teachers don't have a lot of time outside of class to prep or find materials or even have funding for it. So I think, having met you through the back to school event, having met Amber Beeson, who's helping build these school gardens over in Bakersfield, and her being open to sharing those resources here, I think is the key, just working together, because, we're all busy and we all have certain things to do with our job, but if we can fill in those missing pieces, I really think we can get this part of the program going, because once kids learn to grow their own food, that's not just saving them and their parents money and their parents learning to grow food, but it's also empowering them in one part of their lives, and hopefully carrying on to other parts of their lives, just to lift them up and lift the community up.
Right. And what kind of always amazes me when I have different guests talking about different topics is there's always things that you say that have a lot of meaning that people don't realize, because it's something you say so often and you go by so quickly. But what you said was, through the extension you have science-based education.
Yes.
And I don't think people really realize how important that is and how much of an emphasis the UC Extension has on that. And I know John Carlick, when he came over and taught, he would talk in a very layman's point of view until you asked a question, and he would go right from maybe high school level to PhD level within about a 30-second conversation. And that's where the real power of the UC being backed is. You have so much information, so many people and resources, papers and so forth. It's just a huge resource that having you in the community that we can come to you with those questions, and you may not know the answer, but you have those resources behind you. We're going to get ready to go to our first break. This is Paul Vender with Ridgecrest Talk. Tonight we're talking nutrition and gardening education with Jenelle Frey from really tied in with the Bakersfield office, but assigned here in Indian Wells Valley, covering the east side of Kern County. And welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk. Your host, Paul Vanderwerf, with the guest Jenelle Frey from the UC Extension, actually helping us with nutrition, education, and gardening here in the Indian Wells Valley, as well as all of East Kern County and going up into Inyo County. And one of the things we were talking about was some of the amazing work that's going on in Inyo County. The Mono Inyo County Master Gardeners Program is, about 4 years old now. They now have a coordinator in the area. They have a farm advisor there in Bishop. I stopped by there, I think it was 2 summers ago, and kind of I was able to meet everybody in the office in just one walk around real quick. It probably took me only about 20 minutes. But their community gardens, they must have 15 community gardens up there. They even have some paid community garden staff, and they're just doing a wonderful thing of partnering with foundations, nonprofits. Even the USDA has now given them a couple of grants. I was up there last month. We're trying to get some people to come down and to share all the great stuff they're doing up there. They're going to have a co-op grocery store opening in May or June in Independence. Right. And that's going to kind of be a hub, because they have a food desert in Independence. They do not have a grocery store in that community. And I want to get those people to come down and share what they're doing, how they did it, and how we can help, because here we're not just in a desert, but we're in a food desert also.
Yes.
Our nearest farmer's market is in Onyx, which is probably 45 miles away, and it's really just not practical for people here in the valley to get to that. And And it's just amazing what's going on up in Inyo County. What chance have you had to go up there and talk with those people so far?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm based here in Ridgecrest, and this is where we first plan to start expanding the program. It's been a little bit slower to expand here, and so I have expanded up into Lone Pine, working with Low Inyo Elementary there last year. And again, just quite a bit of support from the community as far as donating soil, donating seeds, compost for the garden. But all the way up to Bishop, working with Bishop Elementary and Home Street Middle School up there, as well as the local tribal TANF, trying to reach the native populations. I know we were just talking about the work you're doing in Kern River Valley up there. And so, it's just, even though it's such a small community, these communities up in Inyo County, people really coming together to make change, and that's where it's at, and I keep meeting so many different people with great skills and passion, to bring the gardening, to bring these farmers markets, to get the kids and parents involved. And it's just getting us all together to make it happen, and I really see that happening up there. At the same time, this curriculum, though, is something that kind of brings that missing piece, into the classroom, but then could also be taking the classroom into the garden. And I know that Bishop Elementary just got a grant to build school gardens, but again, there's that piece of, okay, now how do we make it happen? Who do we need to step in to do that, whether it's the master gardeners or individuals from the community? That's where we need to figure out how to bridge that gap.
Right, and I think it was in, I want to say Independence has Owens Valley High School, and on the side there, have you been to that community garden yet?
Haven't been to it. I've heard about it, though.
But they got a little greenhouse in the back, and they have a lot of fruit trees and just a lot of good stuff that's coming out of that. And what's really neat, I think, is the activism of that community, those communities, because they've had the challenges with the water in the aqueduct coming down to LA. Yes. And so they've said, well, we can't just sit here and cry about it.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get organized, and what can we do?
Yes.
And here in the Valley, we're maybe 100 years behind, where we're now looking in April is kind of our next timeline that we're going to say, what are we doing with our water here? We don't have unlimited water. We have lots of different users who need that water. And then how can we garden? What can we control with what we're doing and improve the quality, that we're not just in a desert, but we're not in a food desert. Yes. And I think that's a real key. Now, I went to Inyo Kern Park when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Way back in the 70s. And I kind of have my vision of it. And I went out there this last week, and lo and behold, there's a senior center right there at the start. That's right. Right there at the parking lot. And I was like, oh, I missed that. I didn't even realize that I'd heard there was a senior center in Inyo Kern, but I didn't realize it was there. Now, that's where you're working out of, right?
It is. I live again in Inyo Kern, so it's a great convenience for me, but it's a beautiful building there in the middle of Inyo Kern. Most people pass it because it's a few blocks off the main road.
Kind of off the path. I drove all the way around to school until I finally ended up at the parking lot.
Yeah, and we're right near Inyo Kern Elementary, but there's a beautiful park there. I do see families playing there on the weekends. I went there with my nieces when they visited from Colorado. I like to eat my lunch out there, and the seniors are great. I practice my adult nutrition classes with them, and they get to taste my recipes and learn more about, being healthy. But there's, we were talking earlier about the baseball field back there that's being unused, and part of our program is not only teaching about healthy eating, but also the importance of physical activity each day, and that, along with healthy eating, preventing heart disease, type 2 obesity, etc. But you mentioned that ball field isn't in use, and trying to figure out how we can get that unlocked for kids and right. families to use that. So we have these resources. We just have to create access and really do what we can.
That's one of the differences here in the Valley. When I was a kid, we didn't have the college gym, we didn't have the city gym, and now we actually have more resources, but we need to use them better. Yes. And it's funny that my daughter asks me questions about softball, but she learns it from playing the Wii. She's asked me more questions about how to play softball from the Wii game than she did when she was actually playing in the league. And that's just kind of a sad statement. And I never thought when I was a kid, when I'd hear the generation gap, But that's the generation gap is that everybody who's an adult talks about, you know, how do we get these kids away from video games? How do we get them away from texting? They'll be 10 feet away from somebody and they're texting a message instead of talking to them.
Yes.
And that's, you know, that's a challenge, but you know, recreation, at least when I was a kid, was the most fun that I had.
Yeah.
And if you put, like when we played baseball, okay, at the end of practice, everybody go pick up 10 pieces of trash. You put that environmental component in there. You put the healthy eating component in there. You know, those are all important parts. In fact, one of the things that I want to talk to you some more about after we're done with the show is snacks at community sporting events.
Oh, yes.
It just drives me nuts. I was looking at one of the junior high schools, because I travel all over to the different schools, and they had all candy for the kids to eat. And it's after school, so they're not restricted on what they're selling or anything. Yeah. But basically said, well, this is what the kids buy, so this is what we offer. And I was like, I know it's not an easy answer, but how do we change that? And so we're going to go to break. Right after this, we're going to find out how we can improve this in the city and in the community. Ridgecrest Talk, we'll be right back. And we're back with our final segment with Ridgecrest Talk tonight. We're talking about nutrition, education, gardening with Jenelle Frey, living in Inyokern, working in Inyokern, but tie it in with the UC Extension, which is just this great resource. And that's why I always bring it back, is you glossed over it's science-based. People don't understand what that means because we all have our little traditions or things that we think work. You know, I work with worms and farming, and people think you can cut a worm in half and you'll grow 2 worms. Well, that's just not true, even though they heard that when they were a kid.
Yes.
And so one of the programs I remember a few years back talked about, it's a race to our kids' hearts to catch them when they're young. And the story that it brings home to me is that they talked about no smoking when I was a kid. And I grew up in a house with smoking. We didn't think anything about it. But when I was a freshman in college, the psychology professor asked, how many people in this class smoke? And there was not a single hand that went up. And that, you know, is clearly because we were taught around 2nd, 3rd grade that, you know, smoking was an issue. And so to me, it really seems like it, when you say a race to our kids' hearts, when you're talking obesity, diabetes, these are things that don't happen in a year. This is a lifetime of living patterns that create this emergency when we're 40, 50, and 60 years old, that we need to change with our kids now rather than waiting later. And so let's talk a little bit more about that. We're in our last segment. I want to give you a chance to talk about anything we haven't done and let our audience know how to get involved with your program. So why don't you go ahead and take over and tell us some more about what's going on.
Sure. Well, like you said, you know, obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, we're seeing more and more of this these days, and I think there's a statistic out there that's predicting that this next generation of children are the first generation that are not going to outlive their parents because of their propensity to contract, you know, these conditions through the way they're eating. And, you know, generational traditions, whether it's, you know, eating, smoking, different things that affect our health, definitely are there, and that's something that we work with. And when we're teaching our adult nutrition classes, we're taking into consideration, you know, the modern day lifestyle of most families. And one of the activities we do in our lesson on fats and sugars with the adults is we take a fast food menu and we have them pick out the items that they would order if they were going through the drive-through. And they've already, by this point, learned to read nutrition labels and how much fat, salt, sugar, you know, is their daily limits also for their kids. And they add that up and their eyes go like this because in that meal they've already had more than their fat allowance for probably the whole week in that meal. You know, but then we go back, you know, because we're not teaching, you know, change what you're doing, stop eating fast food, give up all your treats. We're teaching what could you do to make a better choice. I know you were telling me a book I could look at.
I think it's called Eat This, Not That.
Eat This,
right?
Not That. So it gives you a healthier option. And that's what we're trying to do, is just teach kids and adults about picking a healthier option. So when we go back through this fast food menu with them, they pick out some healthier options, which still will allow them to eat out. But at the same time, they add up those numbers and they see the comparison. It's like, wow, this is going to be a lot better for me. I can still eat out if we're on the go, but at the same time, they're learning to cook at home, not just with fresh produce, but how to use canned, frozen, or dried goods, and do this on a budget, and not be able to, and not have an excuse as to why we can't.
Right. And one of the
food.
frustrating things for me as an adult is I know that as you get this information out to our kids, is my kids are not going to come back and call me on it when I'm eating something that's unhealthy. And so that's something we kind of laugh about, but that really does happen. And that's probably one of the measures of how we know you're being successful in the community,
Yep.
is that the kids bring it back to the adults, as well as the adults being educated and bring that to their kids. We talk about a food desert, and Independence was a real good example when their grocery store closed. But Inyokern is in a bit of a food desert.
Yes.
When you talk farmers markets and fresh produce, we really, outside of Scott Shacklet and his operation in Inyokern, we don't have a lot of local gardeners and farmers that are providing vegetables. And that's not something that's going to change overnight just because of education, but we actually need to have commitment from people to get involved. And so we want to support your education, but we also want to get involved. So if people want to get involved with your program, what are some of the ways that obviously teachers can get involved, the kids can get involved, the adults can get involved, but how can we get those people involved?
Absolutely. Well, the first way is just to contact me directly at my phone number, 760-499-4743. Again, that's 760-499-4743. Come by my office in the Inyokern Senior Center. If you come through the door, they'll direct you where to go. I'm always happy to talk with anybody who wants to come by. If you have knowledge in gardening or you have materials that you could donate, get in touch with me. We're always looking for that. As far as teachers and principals, just being open to meeting with me is the biggest thing. A lot of people don't know my name, they don't know who I am, and teachers and principals are so busy that I've reached out to some of them for so long and I still haven't gotten to have a chance to get a meeting. But once they see what this program is about and that it's free and these are quality, again, science-based materials, they get on board. If you are a community organization that's serving low-income families, please get in touch with me. I'll be looking for you as well. I'm out at any event that has to do with health and wellness or serving the community.
So if we have an event, if there's somebody out there who's an event coordinator, they need to get a hold of you and say, hey, please come and share your information for whatever the event is for that community.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So there's so many ways to get involved. You can go online to our website. It's kind of a tough one to remember, but it's efnep, efnep.ucanr.edu. Again, that's efnep, efnep.ucanr.edu. Tells you all about the program. Or email me at jefrey, looks like Jeffrey but with one F, at ucdavis.edu. Again, that's jefrey at ucdavis.edu, and I'll get you started, with whatever group you're working with. Again, this is a program for low-income families, but we don't turn people away.
Okay,
So,
I'm going to go and interrupt because we're getting out of time.
Okay.
We can post some of that information also because we have a YouTube rerun, so to speak, of the
great.
show, and we'll get that information posted out there for people to find out. And we just really appreciate you coming in tonight and sharing this information, and we're going to do whatever we can do to help. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
You bet.
It's great being here.